Carthage, North Africa, around 237 BC. A 9-year-old boy stands before an altar, his hand on the sacrifice, while his father, the greatest general of a defeated nation, watches. The boy wants to join his father's army in Spain. The father allows it on one condition, sworn here now before the gods, that he will never be a friend to Rome. The boy swears Rome will spend the next 50 years learning what that oath cost. He will march an army with war elephants over the Alps in winter. He will destroy 3 Roman armies in 3 years, one of them in an afternoon that remains, 22 centuries later, the most studied battle on earth. He will camp undefeated in Italy for 15 years. And he will lose. This is the story of Hannibal Barca, history's greatest master of the battlefield, and history's sternest lesson that battles are not the war. Rome and Carthage had already fought one titanic war, 23 years, and Carthage had lost, stripped of its islands and buried in debt. Rome owned the sea, which meant to every strategist alive that Carthage could never again attack Italy. You simply could not get there. Hannibal, now 29 and commander of Carthage's army in Spain, looked at that impossibility the way Alexander looked at the sea in front of Tyre. If Rome owns the water, then the road to Italy is land, through hostile Gaul, across the Alps in winter. He left Spain with around 50,000 men, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. The Alps nearly killed the army. Ice, ambushes from mountain tribes, paths that crumbled under the elephants, men freezing in their sleep. He came down into Italy, having lost almost half of everything. And it did not matter, because he now possessed the one weapon Rome had never planned for, a Carthaginian army standing on Italian soil. The impossible approach was the strategy. What made Hannibal lethal was not the elephants, most died that first winter. It was that he studied his enemy's mind the way accountants study ledgers. Rome's generals were elected politicians, serving one-year terms, desperate for glory before their time expired. So Hannibal baited them with exactly what their careers required: the chance for a quick, decisive, glorious battle. At the river Trebia, he sent his cavalry to taunt a Roman army out of camp before breakfast into a freezing river, where frozen, starving legions met his ambush on the far bank. A year later, at Lake Trasimene, he lured another consul into a foggy defile between hills and the water, where 40,000 Carthaginians waited in the mist. When the trap closed, an entire Roman army and its general ceased to exist in 3 hours. It remains the largest ambush in military history. Rome had now lost 2 armies in 2 years, not to superior force, but to a man who could predict Roman decisions better than the Romans could. Rome's answer was rage on an industrial scale. The largest army the Republic had ever fielded, 86,000 men, sent to erase Hannibal in one blow. He met them at Cannae in August of 216 BC with about 50,000. What happened next is still taught at West Point. Hannibal placed his weakest troops, Gauls and Spaniards, in the center, bowed outward toward the enemy, and his veteran African infantry folded back at the wings, with his superior cavalry on the flanks. The Roman mass slammed into the weak center, which did exactly what it was supposed to do: bend and slowly give ground. The Romans pushed deeper, sensing victory, packing themselves tighter, and the bowed line inverted into a pocket. The African veterans wheeled in on both sides. Hannibal's cavalry, having driven off the Roman horse, closed the ring from behind. 86,000 men were now inside a bag with no exit, so compressed that most could not raise their weapons. By sunset, Rome had lost more soldiers in one afternoon than America lost in the entire Vietnam War. Hannibal had used the Romans' own strength, their weight, their aggression, their certainty, as the engine of the trap. It is called the double envelopment, and every general since has dreamed of repeating it. And then came the moment historians have argued about for 2,000 years. Rome lay 5 days' march away, defended by old men and panic. Hannibal's cavalry commander, Hannibal, begged him, "Send me ahead tonight. In 5 days you dine on the capital." Hannibal refused. He had no siege engines, his army was exhausted, and Rome's walls were the strongest in the world. He believed the real prize was politics, that after 3 catastrophes, Rome's Italian allies would abandon her and the Republic would sue for peace, as every rational state did. Hannibal's reply became immortal. "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but not how to use one." And here Rome revealed the quality Hannibal had not priced in. The Republic did not negotiate. It did not even acknowledge the concept. The Senate forbade the word peace, thanked the surviving consul for not despairing of the Republic, armed slaves and boys, and swore in new legions. Most of the allies held. Rome simply refused to update its self-image to include losing and switched to the strategy of Fabius. Never again offer Hannibal a battle. Shadow him, starve him, and let time do what legions could not. What followed is one of the strangest chapters in military history. For 15 years, Hannibal marched up and down Italy, unbeaten and slowly losing. No Roman army would meet him. No Carthaginian fleet could resupply him past Rome's navy, and Carthage's politicians, jealous and cheap, sent their greatest son almost nothing. His veterans aged, his allies wavered. His brother Hasdrubal finally marched a relief army over the Alps, and Rome, choosing its battles now, destroyed it before the brothers could unite. The first Hannibal knew of it was his brother's severed head, thrown into his camp. Meanwhile, a young Roman who had survived Cannae as a teenager was doing something no Roman had dared, studying Hannibal. His name was Scipio. He took Hannibal's own methods, speed, deception, the indirect approach, and applied them to the map instead of the battlefield. He conquered Carthage's silver-rich Spain, then landed in Africa itself, threatening Carthage the way Hannibal had threatened Rome. The lesson had come full circle. Carthage panicked and recalled its general. After 36 years away, Hannibal sailed home to defend a city he barely remembered. The two greatest generals of the age met once, at Zama, in 202 BC, on a plain southwest of Carthage. The night before, ancient writers say, they met alone between the camps, two connoisseurs of each other's work, and Hannibal offered peace. Scipio refused. Rome had not crossed the sea to negotiate. On the field, everything was inverted. This time Rome had the cavalry advantage. Scipio had bought Carthage's own Numidian horsemen out from under her. Hannibal led with 80 war elephants. Scipio simply opened lanes in his ranks, funneled the beasts harmlessly through corridors of javelins and noise, and closed the lanes behind them. The infantry lines ground against each other for hours, until Scipio's cavalry, returning from routing Hannibal's horse, hammered into the Carthaginian rear. Cannae in mirror image, with Hannibal inside the ring. Carthage surrendered, gave up its fleet, its empire, and its right to wage war. The boy who swore the oath had lost it to a man who had learned everything from him. Hannibal's final act may be his most remarkable. Elected to lead Carthage's civil government, the man of war turned out to be a devastating reformer. He audited the corrupt aristocracy, cleaned up the treasury, and paid Rome's crushing war indemnity ahead of schedule without raising taxes. The aristocrats he audited did what elites do. They wrote to Rome, whispering that Hannibal was plotting again. Rome, which could forgive any enemy except him, demanded his head. So at around 60, the old general fled east and spent his last decade as a freelance strategist for any king willing to stand up to Rome, still fighting the oath. Rome's agents followed him from court to court for years, until, at about 64, Cornered in a small kingdom on the Black Sea with soldiers surrounding the house, he drank the poison he had carried in a ring for years. His last words, as Livy reports them, "Let us relieve the Romans of their long anxiety, since they find it too slow to wait for an old man's death." Rome had built an empire in the time it spent being afraid of one man. So what did Hannibal know? On the battlefield, one principle executed better than anyone before or since: your enemy's strength is raw material for your trap. At Cannae, the harder Rome pushed, the deeper it dug its own grave. He weaponized their aggression, their weight, their certainty of victory. Off the battlefield, his story asks the harder question. He won every battle that mattered and lost the war completely because he made one deep assumption: that Rome, like every rational state, would negotiate after enough defeats. Rome declined to be rational against an opponent who will not update, who would rather arm slaves than admit the game has changed. Tactical genius becomes a treadmill. Meanwhile, Scipio, the man who actually finished the war, spent it copying Hannibal's methods and aiming them at the one target that could not be replaced. Not Rome's armies, but Carthage's foundations. So take both lessons. Turn your rival's strength into your leverage, and before you start winning, know exactly what winning is supposed to produce. A victory that changes nothing is just an expensive rehearsal. Next time, a boy abandoned on the steppe, hunted by his own tribe, who built the largest land empire in human history, and unlike Hannibal, finished the job. Genghis Khan. Subscribe and step into the minds that made history.